I got kicked out of my house on Christmas Eve by my own mother. That's how this story starts. It was 2 years ago, and I still remember the snow crunching under my boots as I stumbled down the front steps, her shrill voice cutting through the freezing air like a blade. "Go to your precious job, Lindsay. You clearly love it more than your own family." She didn't even let me grab my coat. I had to dig an old one out of the trunk of my car as I sat there shivering and stunned, watching my family close the door without a second glance. My father, stone-faced and silent. My brother Chris, standing in the hallway, arms crossed, staring down at his phone like I was an inconvenience he was glad to see gone. I had just finished a brutal holiday shift at the hospital. 12 hours of non-stop patients, crying kids, stressed-out families, and endless charting. I'd driven straight to my parents' house, expecting the warmth of a fireplace, maybe a glass of mulled wine. Instead, I got the verbal equivalent of a door slammed in my face. It wasn't the first time they'd made me feel like a stranger in my own family, but it was the first time they'd physically shut me out. I remember sitting in my car, fingers numb, my breath fogging the windshield, and thinking, how did we get here? Growing up, it was always clear that Chris was the golden child. Star quarterback, honor student, the charming son who never heard the word no. My parents poured their time, money, and love into him like he was some investment that would surely pay off one day. Meanwhile, I was the reliable one, the quiet girl who did well in school, stayed out of trouble, and helped around the house without being asked. My mother once told me that being a nurse suited me because I was a caretaker at heart. I'd smiled at the time, not realizing it was just another way of saying, you're here to serve, not shine. But things got worse when I landed my first full-time job at the hospital. Suddenly, my steady paycheck became the family's unofficial emergency fund. Car repairs for Chris covered. Surprise medical bills for Mom. On me, family vacation where I'd end up paying for my share and then some. You guessed it. I never complained because deep down I wanted to prove I was a good daughter. I convinced myself that one day they'd appreciate my sacrifices, that they'd see I was just as valuable as Chris. But that night, sitting alone in my car headlights, cutting through the falling snow, I realized how wrong I'd been. The final straw had come a week earlier. My parents had invited me to a family dinner to discuss something important. I'd shown up with a bottle of wine and a hopeful heart, only to find out they were asking me to co-sign a loan for Chris's latest business venture, a gym. A luxury gym, to be exact. He'd dropped out of college last year to pursue his passion, and now apparently that passion required my financial backing. "You work in healthcare," Chris had said, leaning back in his chair like he was pitching to a boardroom. "You know how important fitness is. Plus, this gym's going to be a game changer. State-of-the-art equipment, premium memberships, exclusive events. It's a guaranteed win." I'd looked at my parents, expecting them to at least pretend to consider my side of things. But my mom just smiled, eyes bright with the glow of Chris's imagined success, while my dad nodded along like a puppet with cut strings. "We've already put up the house as collateral." Dad had added, his voice heavy with the weight of their bad decisions. "But we need a bit more to cover the startup costs. Just a small loan, honey. Your family." That word again. Family. The unspoken contract that bound me to them financially and emotionally, despite the mounting evidence that I was nothing more than a convenient backup plan. "I can't," I'd said, my voice breaking the heavy, anticipatory silence. "I'm still paying off my student loans. I can't take on another financial burden." Chris had scoffed, pushing back from the table. "You're so selfish, Lindsay. This is exactly why you're alone. You only ever think about yourself." I'd felt my heart crack a little then, but I'd kept my face neutral, forcing a calm I didn't feel. My mother had pursed her lips, disappointment etched into every line of her face. My father had simply sighed, the kind of exasperated sound that said, "You're a burden. You always have been." So, when my mom kicked me out on Christmas Eve for refusing to help fund Chris's latest pipe dream, it shouldn't have hurt as much as it did. But it did. It cut deep. I'd driven away that night, blinking back tears as holiday lights blurred into streaks of color on the darkened streets. That was the night I stopped trying to be the good daughter. That was the night I decided to stop giving, stop caring, stop sacrificing myself for people who saw me as nothing more than a walking, talking ATM. And that was the night I started planning my escape. After that freezing Christmas Eve, I made a silent vow no more being the family doormat. I stopped picking up the phone every time my mother called with her little favors. I ignored Chris's texts about quick cash transfers and Dad's thinly veiled guilt trips about helping out the family. I started saving my money, cutting expenses, and most importantly, building walls around my heart. It wasn't immediate. It's hard to unlearn a lifetime of being the family peacekeeper. At first, I still found myself reaching for the phone every time I saw Mom's name flash on the screen, my fingers itching to text back with a polite, "Sure, I can help." But then I'd remember that night my own mother shouting at me to leave while my father stood silently by, and I'd force my hand to stay still. The first time I actually ignored her call, my heart raced like I was committing some kind of moral crime. But when the world didn't collapse and no one showed up at my door demanding explanations, it got easier. A week turned into 2, and then a month. By the end of January, I felt like I could breathe again. But my family, they noticed. And they didn't like it. The first sign was the barrage of passive-aggressive texts from my mother. At first, they were subtle. "Missed you at Sunday dinner. Everyone was asking about you. I hope you're okay. You never call anymore." Then they escalated. "Don't forget who raised you. We've always been there for you. Family is all that really matters, Lindsay. Don't lose sight of that." I deleted them without replying. But that didn't stop her. She started calling my work, pretending it was an emergency, just to get me on the line. One day, a nurse leaned into my patient's room and whispered, "Hey, your mom's on the phone. She says it's urgent." I froze. It was like being yanked back into that freezing night, like my pulse had turned to ice in my veins. I excused myself and picked up the call in the hallway, my voice tight. "Mom, I'm working. What's the emergency?" "Oh, honey, it's nothing serious," she chirped, her voice bright and too chipper. "I just wanted to check in. You've been so distant lately. I thought maybe something was wrong." My jaw clenched. "I'm fine, I'm just busy." "Well, don't be a stranger," she said, her tone sliding into that familiar, thinly veiled guilt. "Family is important, you know. We have to stick together." I hung up without another word. I stood in that hospital hallway, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows, my pulse racing with a mix of anger and guilt. I felt trapped, like they were tightening their grip the more I tried to slip away. Then came the visits. Chris showed up at my apartment one night unannounced and uninvited. I opened the door to find him leaning against the frame, the smell of cologne and cheap beer wafting in. "Hey, sis," he said, flashing that same smirk that had charmed teachers and coaches his whole life. "Got a minute?" I hesitated, but he pushed past me before I could respond, flopping onto my couch like he owned the place. "Chris, what are you doing here?" I managed, shutting the door a little harder than necessary. "Just checking on my favorite sister," he said, stretching out his legs and tossing his keys onto my coffee table, narrowly missing a stack of medical journals. "You've been quiet. Mom's worried. Is that why you're really here?" I crossed my arms, leaning against the kitchen counter. "Or did you come to hit me up for money again?" He chuckled, scratching his jaw like I'd just made a clever joke. "Come on, Lindsay. You know I've got big things in the works. The gym's going to take off. I just need a little more time." I stared at him, my stomach twisting with a mix of disbelief and anger. Was he really this dense? "Chris, I'm not your personal bank," I said, each word cutting like broken glass. "I have my own bills to pay. Student loans, rent, life." He frowned, his easy, arrogant demeanor flickering for a moment. "Wow, way to be supportive. I'm trying to do something big here, make something of myself. Isn't that what you wanted?" "I wanted a family that didn't see me as a walking ATM," I snapped. "I wanted parents who didn't throw me out on Christmas Eve because I refused to risk my financial future for a pipe dream." The silence that followed was thick, oppressive. For a brief, beautiful moment, I thought I'd finally gotten through to him. But then he rolled his eyes, pushing himself up from the couch. "God, you're so dramatic, Lindsay. No wonder you're alone. Maybe if you weren't such a tight ass, you'd have someone to spend the holidays with." I felt something inside me crack. Not my heart, I'd stopped letting him close enough to reach that. But something deeper. Something that had been holding me back, keeping me tethered to a family that only ever drained me. He grabbed his keys, swaying slightly as he moved toward the door. Whatever. Good talk, sis. Mom says hi. I slammed the door behind him, my hands shaking with a rage I could barely contain. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood, breathing hard, my pulse roaring in my ears. That night I started looking for a lawyer. I hadn't seen my parents in months, but they found ways to intrude. The passive-aggressive texts from my mother had slowed, but the guilt-laden voicemails were relentless. I'd come home to my small apartment after a long shift only to hear my phone ping with yet another voicemail. "Lindsay, it's your mother. You really should come to Sunday dinner. We miss you. Chris has been asking about you. Don't be such a stranger." It always felt like a command disguised as an invitation. I deleted them without listening to the end, my fingers trembling as I tossed my phone onto the couch. I'd come to hate the sound of her voice. Then one rainy Tuesday, an email from my bank changed everything. Account alert, potential fraudulent activity detected. My heart sank. I clicked it open, my pulse thundering in my ears. The email detailed a recent attempt to access my savings account from an unfamiliar IP address. My mind raced as I dialed the bank's customer service line, every worst-case scenario flashing through my mind. After a frustrating 20 minutes on hold, a representative finally picked up. "Ma'am, it appears someone attempted to change the password on your account. Would you like us to initiate a full security lockdown?" "Yes," I replied, my voice cold. "Lock it down. And send me a full access history for the past 6 months." I hung up, my mind already spinning with suspicion. Only one person in my life had both the audacity and the potential access to my banking information: Chris. The access logs arrived the next day. I opened the attachment on my laptop, my hands shaking as I scrolled through the long list of IP addresses. Most were my own homework, my phone. But there, nestled among the familiar addresses, were several unfamiliar ones, all clustered around my parents' home address. The blood drained from my face. My stomach twisted into knots as I realized what this meant. He'd been trying to get into my account from my parents' house. I leaned back in my chair, my hands cold, my mind racing. This wasn't just a desperate brother leaning on his family. This was calculated. I spent the next few days in a haze, my mind replaying every conversation I'd had with Chris over the past year. All the little jabs about me being financially comfortable, the passive-aggressive comments from my parents about how I should help out more. It all clicked into place. They weren't just asking for help, they were planning to take it. I started digging. First, I checked my credit reports. Clean, thank God. But something felt off. I had a gut feeling that if Chris was desperate enough to try hacking my account, there had to be more. I pulled my old tax returns, bank statements, and even dug out the lease for my apartment. I pored over every line, every document, looking for anything out of place, and then I found it. Buried in my parents' joint property records was a recent mortgage filing. My parents had refinanced their home 6 months ago, around the same time they'd asked me to co-sign the loan for Chris's gym. I double-checked the dates, my heart pounding. The timing was too perfect. It got worse. They hadn't just refinanced. They'd taken out a second mortgage, and the paperwork listed a silent partner for the gym investment. My jaw clenched as I realized what they'd done. They'd used their house as collateral, but the paperwork named Chris as the primary beneficiary. If the gym failed, they'd lose their home. And here was the kicker: the email address associated with the silent partner. It was an old account I hadn't used in years, one I'd shared with my parents for family planning before I'd moved out. My heart raced as I pulled up the old account, frantically guessing at passwords until I finally got in. Hundreds of emails, poured in, most of them junk, but nestled in between the spam and forgotten subscriptions were several messages from their mortgage lender. They'd been using my name, my old email, to secure financial documents without my knowledge. I felt my vision blur with a mix of rage and betrayal. They hadn't just been leaning on me. They'd been building a financial safety net under their failing son using my name. My parents, the people who had thrown me out on Christmas Eve, had tried to loop me into their sinking ship without my consent. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking. I'd always known my family was selfish, that they saw me as a resource rather than a person. But this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I sat in my darkened apartment, the rain streaking down my windows, my mind spinning with the weight of their betrayal. I felt something harden inside me, something that had cracked the night they shut the door in my face. They wanted to use me to pull me down with them as they sank. Fine. Let's see how well they swim when I cut the last line holding them up. I took a deep breath, my pulse slowing as a plan started to form. If they wanted to play dirty, I could match them move for move. They'd counted on my loyalty, my silence. They thought I was still the quiet, obedient daughter who would bend over backwards to keep the peace. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The first step in my plan was simple: cut off every lifeline I'd ever extended to them. I started by changing every password to every account I owned, banking, email, utilities, even my Netflix subscription. I locked down my credit, set up fraud alerts, and pulled my financial records for a full audit. I wasn't just closing doors. I was sealing them with steel and concrete. Next, I hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a friend from nursing school who had shifted into corporate litigation and had a well-earned reputation for being ruthless when it came to financial disputes. I laid out my situation, the emotional manipulation, the unauthorized use of my personal information, and the blatant financial deceit. She listened, her eyes narrowing with every detail. "Are you ready to go nuclear?" she asked, tapping her pen against her notepad. "Burn it all," I replied without hesitation. The first blow came in the form of a cease and desist letter. My lawyer drafted it with chilling precision, outlining every breach of trust, every potential charge for identity theft, and every civil penalty my family could face if they didn't immediately cease using my name, email, or any of my financial information for their shady dealings. I expected a furious phone call from my mother within hours of the letter being delivered. Instead, I got a silent, seething voicemail from my father. "Lindsay," he said, his voice tight with barely contained rage, "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is a family matter. You're blowing things out of proportion. Call me." I didn't. The second wave hit when my lawyer filed a formal fraud alert on my behalf. It flagged every financial institution tied to my name, including the bank my parents used for their second mortgage. Within days, the bank froze the account pending an investigation. My mother cracked first. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, banging on my door like a woman possessed. I opened it a few inches, blocking her view with my body. "Lindsay, what is this nonsense?" she snapped, shoving a crumpled copy of the cease and desist letter into the gap. "Why are you trying to ruin this family?" I met her furious stare, feeling a strange, icy calm settle over me. "Why are you trying to ruin me?" Her eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "We raised you," she hissed, jabbing a finger into the doorframe. "We supported you. We've always been there for you." I barked out a harsh, humorless laugh. "You threw me out on Christmas Eve. You've treated me like a walking ATM for years. And now you've tried to steal my identity to bail out Chris's failing business. You don't get to play the victim here." She flinched, her eyes darting to the side like she was scanning for a sympathetic neighbor. We just needed a little help. Families do that for each other." "No," I said, my voice low and deadly. "Real families don't steal. They don't manipulate. They don't lie." I shut the door in her face, ignoring her furious, muffled shouts. I watched through the peephole as she stood there, fists clenched, her chest heaving with a mix of rage and disbelief. She stood there for a full minute before finally turning and storming back down the hallway, her heels echoing sharply against the tile floor. The next day, my father tried a different tactic. I woke up to a long, rambling email filled with poorly veiled threats about cutting me out of the family and how disappointed my grandparents would be if they knew how selfish I'd become. I deleted it without replying. I wasn't done yet. My lawyer helped me draft another letter, this one to the bank, handling my parents' second mortgage. We included the evidence I'd collected from my old email account, the fraudulent documents, and a detailed timeline of the unauthorized account access attempts. I demanded they remove my name from any and all financial obligations related to my parents' property, threatening legal action if they failed to comply. It worked. Within a week, the bank contacted my parents, informing them that their mortgage was now considered a high-risk liability subject to immediate review. Their account was frozen again, and this time it wouldn't be as simple as making a few calls to fix it. The fallout was immediate. Chris lost his temper first. He started blowing up my phone, leaving snarling, profanity-laced voicemails about how I was ruining his future, how I was destroying his dream of owning a gym. I saved every message, forwarding them to my lawyer, who filed them away as potential evidence for the inevitable civil suit I was building against him. My father tried the guilt route next, leaving me a voicemail that started with a heavy, dramatic sigh. Lindsay, I'm disappointed in you. Family is supposed to stick together. We're supposed to support each other. You're tearing this family apart. I deleted that one too. I thought my mother would cave next, but she surprised me. She went on a full-blown social media rampage, painting me as the ungrateful, heartless daughter who had betrayed her loving parents in their time of need. She posted old family photos carefully curated to show us all smiling, and wrote long, tearful captions about how she didn't recognize the person I'd become. I watched in stunned silence as the comments flooded in, friends and distant relatives chiming in with their uninformed support. I resisted the urge to respond, to correct the narrative, to scream the truth into the void. Instead, I hit print. Every post, every comment, every like added to the growing file my lawyer had started. My mother's downfall was going to be public, permanent, and brutal. When the bank officially severed my name from my parents' mortgage, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. It was like I'd been walking around with invisible chains, and suddenly I was free. But freedom came with a cost. The moment my parents realized I wasn't just bluffing, that I was serious about cutting them off, the real fallout began. They tried to rally the rest of the family against me, painting me as the cold, ungrateful daughter who had turned her back on the people who made her. My aunt, a woman who had always taken my mother's side in every family dispute, sent me a long, scathing text. She accused me of being heartless, of abandoning my responsibility to my family. She ended the message with a line that cut deeper than I expected. You were never really one of us, were you? It should have hurt. It should have made me question my choices, to wonder if I'd gone too far. But instead, it felt like a confirmation, a brutal but necessary reminder that I'd always been the outsider, the one who never fit into their carefully curated image of a perfect family. I blocked her number. Then the phone call started. At first, it was just my parents, alternating between guilt-tripping and outright threats. When that didn't work, they roped in Chris, who left a series of increasingly frantic voicemails. Lindsay, pick up your damn phone. You're ruining everything. Do you have any idea what you're doing to Mom and Dad? To me, you're a selfish, vindictive Bacchae. I hope you rot. I saved every message, forwarding them to my lawyer. She suggested we escalate to a restraining order if the harassment continued. I hesitated, but the idea of legally shutting them out for good was tempting. The breaking point came a week later. I was at work finishing up a night shift when I got a text from my best friend, Sarah. Hey, just a heads up. Your mom's been posting some crazy stuff on Facebook. You might want to check it out. I took my phone into the break room, my hands trembling as I opened the app. My mother had gone full scorched earth, posting a multi-paragraph rant about her lost, ungrateful daughter, complete with carefully chosen Bible verses about honoring thy parents and the dangers of selfish ambition. She'd even attached photos of me as a child, smiling and innocent, as if to drive home just how far I'd supposedly fallen. I felt my pulse pound in my ears as I scrolled through the comments. Friends, cousins, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years chimed in with their support, offering prayers and sympathy to my poor, heartbroken mother. But then, just as I was about to close the app in disgust, I saw a single comment that changed everything. Didn't you guys take out a second mortgage on the house without her permission? Maybe if you hadn't tried to screw over your own daughter, she wouldn't have cut you off. I nearly dropped my phone. My heart raced as I refreshed the page, watching as the comment thread exploded into a full-on family drama. People started asking questions, demanding answers, piecing together the truth from the carefully curated lies my parents had been spreading. My mother tried to delete the post, but it was too late. The screenshots were already circulating, spreading through the family like wildfire. Later that night, Sarah called me, her voice breathless with a mix of shock and delight. "Girl, your mom just got roasted in the family group chat. Like people are straight up asking if they should cut her off." I sank onto my couch, feeling a strange, surreal calm wash over me. The family I'd spent my whole life trying to please, the people I'd sacrificed so much for, were finally facing the truth. They couldn't spin this. They couldn't guilt trip their way out of it. They'd overplayed their hand, and now they were paying the price. The next morning, I took the final step. I filed a legal petition to officially disown my parents, severing any remaining financial or legal ties. It was a drastic move, one that would cut me off from any potential inheritance, but it felt right. I was done letting them dictate the terms of my life. A week later, my lawyer called. "It's done," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You're legally free." I hung up and sat there for a long moment, staring out my apartment window as the sun dipped below the skyline. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I changed my phone number, deleted my old email account, and started fresh. I even moved to a new apartment, one with better light and a balcony where I could drink my morning coffee without the ghost of my past lurking over my shoulder. I wasn't just cutting them off. I was erasing them from my life, one small, defiant step at a time. And as I stood on my balcony that evening watching the city lights flicker to life, I whispered the words I'd been too afraid to say for so long. "Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, Chris." They say blood is thicker than water, but for the first time I felt weightless, like I'd finally slipped free from the chains of my past. I turned back into my apartment, closing the door behind me, and let the silence wrap around me like a warm, welcoming embrace. I was finally free. Story 2. I paid off my brother's gambling debt for the first time. At the age of 24, I continued to believe in family-oriented fairy tales. 10 years later, my mother's voice crackles across the phone as I stand in my kitchen gazing at my empty savings account. "You know Ishmael wouldn't inquire if it wasn't significant, Ava, my dear. I'm the one people call when the walls are closing in, the one who is successful, or the one who is dependable. My money balance serves as a clear reminder of my dependability tonight." "I just paid his rent last month, Mom." Pinching the bridge of my nose and his automobile payment from the previous month, I reply. "However, this is not the same. This time he's in serious difficulty. It's obviously different. It's never the same." The worst thing, Melina's quips made everyone laugh, and I was seated at our customary Sunday supper 2 hours ago. Even when she's twisting the knife, my sister has a knack of making things seem easy. "Poor Eva," she remarked, lifting her glass of wine. "No play, all work? Your money account at least keeps you warm at night." Everyone had chuckled, even in the summer. My younger sister, who typically avoids conflict. As usual, I'd faked a smile. I made up an excuse to go to the restroom on the way back. In the dining room, I had heard them. Melina had murmured, "the family cash machine," and then there had been more laughter. "She's too lonely, thank God, to spend it on anything else." My mother is still chatting hours later. "Sweetheart, it's just 9,000 this time. This Nico individual isn't very patient, according to Ishmael." A text buzzes on my phone. "Talk about the devil. Nico is here. Inform your brother that he has 48 hours. I interject. "Mom, I have to go. Tomorrow we'll speak." I slide down against the kitchen cabinet until I'm sitting on the chilly tile floor, and I end the call before she can object. Once more, my phone buzzes. It's Ishmael this time. "Please, sis. I'm aware that I made a mistake, but Nico, the others are not like him. He is discussing breaking stuff. Important stuff. Similar to bones." I count to 10 while closing my eyes. Melina sends me another SMS when I open them. "Help him and stop being so theatrical." Anyway, for what else are you saving? For what purpose am I saving a life, perhaps? A future, perhaps. Perhaps the desire not to serve as everyone's emergency fund. Once more, my phone rings. This time it's my dad. An unusual event that indicates a hazardous situation. Samir simply calls to remind me of his obligations to his family. He has a rough, commanding voice. Your mom is in tears. Do you want it that way? Family looks out for family, Dad. You are aware of this. I am aware of this. I began collecting my money to purchase school materials for the summer when I was 12 years old, since Dad had 2 jobs. Every time Melina needed assistance paying her rent, I knew it. Each time Ishmael went too far. Mom's credit cards were always maxed up. As soon as the doorbell rings, I leap through the peephole. Ishmael appears desperate and unkempt. He has crimson eyes. He rings again, his hands trembling. Please, Ava. Through the door, he calls. In there, I hear you. Please kindly assist me in solving this. I stand still, breathing heavily while using my phone. My savings account is still shown on the banking app. 10 years of being in charge. 1 is living below my means, which means I have to decline new clothing vacations and any other form of life outside of work. I could also be there for them if they needed me. Time and time again, the doorbell rings. Nico sends one more text message and my phone lights up. There is not much time left. I hope your brother's sister is excellent. Once more, I tumble down the wall. Something I can't quite put my finger on made my chest tight. Perhaps it's rage. It might be grief. Perhaps it's the understanding that family-related fairy tales are simply that, fairy tales. I'll probably give in tomorrow. I'll send the funds, hear their gratitude, observe them. By the supper on Sunday of next week, forget about it. But while my brother rings the doorstep and my phone blares with cries of desperation, I sit here in my dark apartment and promise myself something. Naturally, this will be the final time I make this commitment. Tonight, though, something feels different. Perhaps it is the reverberation of what Melina said, a cash machine for the family. Or perhaps I'm simply too exhausted to mean it at this time. The ringing of the doorbell ceases. I hear Ishmael's footsteps fleeing down the corridor in the abrupt hush. A final beep on my phone reminds me that I have a meeting with a possible customer tomorrow. Life continues. It works for everyone else, at least. I'm standing in a packed tech conference center 3 weeks after the Nico incident, feigning interest in cloud computing solutions. At that moment, I hear a laugh coming from behind me. Your expression conveys that you would like to be somewhere else. A tall man, wearing a well-fitting suit, was standing there as I turned. He crinkled his amused eyes. Michael is written on his name tag. Isn't it clear that Architecture Solutions lead, I inquire, attempting to grin a little just at other victims. My name is Michael. Want to get away from the poor conference coffee at the coffee station. For the first time in weeks, I feel at ease as Michael shares his work creating sustainable structures. You feel heard because of the way he listens. Heard? What brings you to this exciting occasion? He asks. I'm trying to find my team new project management software. In all honesty, though, I'm largely hiding from my phone. A terrible split. I chuckle. A bad family. They are all complex, aren't they? Hey, there's this amazing Italian place around the corner there, he says after pausing. Pasta has the power to erase family strife. What are your thoughts I should decline? Ishmael left me 3 missed calls and my mother texted me about pressing family issues. However, Michael's smile is sincere. I also want something for me, for once. Take the lead. Candles in wine bottles and red checkered tablecloths adorn the cozy little eatery. Talking about his sister Stacy, who seems refreshingly regular, Michael places an order for wine. In fact, she is hosting a cookout this weekend. I say, he says, do you want to attend? My phone is buzzing. Melina, Mom is sobbing because you refuse to respond. I hope you feel good about yourself. I flipped my phone over. I would adore doing so. My family get-togethers are nothing like the BBQ. Stacy gives me a sincere embrace as she welcomes me. No one makes passive-aggressive remarks about my life choices, and her children play tag instead of begging for money. You're the well-known Eva, then. As she hands me a drink, Stacy says, "Stacy, Michael hasn't stopped talking about you all week." Despite his moans, Michael is grinning. "What? It's adorable. You resemble an adolescent crush." Michael becoming my haven as the weeks stretch into months. On weekends, we explore the city, speak about everything and nothing, and discover hidden architectural treasures. He talks me about starting his business from scratch and about losing his father when he was young. I tell him about my job, my passion for photography, and my travel aspirations. However, I keep the money. My role as the family's ATM and the mounting number of urgent texts I've been ignoring from him. Michael takes me out to dinner 6 months after our first date at the same Italian restaurant. Over tiramisu, he asks, "Come live with me. I detest waking up without you, and my house is closer to your office." My phone is vibrating. Mom, once more, Ishmael faces dire consequences if he doesn't get the $9,000 before Friday. It's urgent. Never. I turn to face Michael. A nice, successful drama. My chest burns with humiliation as I free Michael. He should be aware of what he's getting into. "I had to tell you something first." I begin, but he interrupts. "No matter what it is, we will work it out together. That's the role of partners." Partners. The word tightens my throat. I want you to understand how complex my family is. He grabs my hand and reaches across the table. "I adore you, Ava. Family is complicated." Once more, my phone buzzes. It's summertime this time, too. "Please." This time, he made a huge mistake. Michael gives my hand a squeeze. "Is everything all right?" My savings account is only a small portion of what it should be, and I should inform him about the money, the manipulation, and the constant requests, as I am unable to refuse them. Rather, I squeak back and claim that everything is wonderful. Lying in bed at Michael's later that evening. Now our place, I guess. He sleeps soundly next to me while I gaze at the ceiling. I turn on my phone one final time. "Mom, you will be responsible for whatever occurs if you don't assist your brother." I'm a better parent than this. I fully shut off my phone, nestle into Michael's warmth, and make an effort to think that I deserve this joy and that I can live this new life free from the demands of my family. However, I can't get rid of the sense that everything is about to alter as I fall asleep. Because family secrets are like that. They are never permanently buried, and mine are going to collapse all around me. Using a historic ring that belonged to his grandmother, Michael pops the question on a foggy morning by the lake. It's flawless, straightforward, and genuine. Similar to him. I finally believe I deserve this happiness, so I say yes while crying. Later, while we're driving home, he adds, "We should tell your family in person. Invite them to supper." Even as my gut clenches, I nod. They will want to rejoice. That night, they come to our flat in exceptionally good spirits. Even Merlina is grinning and embracing me tightly. She finally enters the adult world and exclaims, "Look at you," as she examines my ring. Mom is crying uncontrollably, using a tissue to dab at her eyes. My little daughter, marrying a man who is so successful. I try to grin, even though I understand the focus on achievement. While I serve wine and attempt to keep the conversation light, Michael is in the kitchen making his famous lasagna. "Never. You're radiant." Melina touches my cheek as she speaks. "You're already suited to marriage. Michael as well. You definitely choose a winner." Summer gives a hearty nod. "His home is stunning." "You're really fortunate, sis." Surprisingly, the evening goes smoothly. Nobody brings up Ishmael's problems or money. Even my late-arriving father appears really pleased for me. My phone rings when I'm having dessert. It's a job. I apologize, but I say standing. I must accept this. The Singapore project is at issue. Everyone is conversing over tiramisu when I enter the corridor. The conversation is brief. There is only a schedule conflict. However, I hear conversations coming from the dining room as I'm making my way back. I stop. An old habit from years of listening in to see how my family really feels. Melina says it's about time she found a wealthy man. She spoke clearly but in a quiet voice. She had been hoarding her money long enough for heaven's sake. She murmurs. She's laughing though. But you're correct. Perhaps she will no longer be so frugal with her family. Please. Melina gives a snort. She will be a lot simpler to access now that she has a wealthy fiancé. Michael looks like the kind of person who would want to support his family, but Mom says we should wait. First, let them get married. We may then discuss Ishmael's predicament. I'm feeling ill. I want to rush in and face them, but my hands are trembling. Then I hear movement. In the hallway, Michael emerges, his expression inscrutable. He's been standing there for how long? We look at each other. He heard it everything. I start to speak, but he gives me a little shake of his head and moves on back to the dining room. As he gives coffee to everyone, his speech is very normal, but I can sense the change in him. The remainder of the evening flies by. With kisses and embraces, my family departs. Mom is already discussing guest lists and wedding locations. Melina whispers and squeezes my arm. Little sister, we're going dress shopping shortly. Michael and I quietly tidy up after they go. I'm awaiting his words, his inquiries, and his evaluation of me. He simply loads the dishwasher instead. His motions are robotic. At last. I am at my breaking point. Michael. For what duration? Without glancing at me, he asks in a low voice, How long have they been taking advantage of you in this way? I ought to have informed you. Indeed. His eyes are sorrowful as he turns. You ought to have. I whispered that I felt humiliated. I wanted you not to see, to be aware. For what purpose that you are treated like an ATM by your family, that they are already preparing ways to profit on our marriage. My cheeks well up with tears. I apologize. He takes me into his arms as he crosses the kitchen. Don't say sorry. It is not your responsibility to apologize. Tonight would be different, I thought. I speak into his chest. They seemed so content. He says bitterly, they were happy. They are pleased with what they believe they can obtain from us. I wipe my tears and pull back. How do we proceed? You tell me everything first. No more secrets. Never. I need to understand what I'm getting into if we decide to get married. I then share with him the years of guilt trips and bailouts, Melina's subtle jabs, Dad's selective appearances when money is involved, Ishmael's gambling, and Mom's emotional manipulation. After I'm done, Michael remains silent for a while before saying, You know this has to stop. I am aware. For the first time, I truly understand their scheme to take use of my marriage in order to exploit Michael. Somehow it's different. Even worse. He kisses my forehead and says, We'll work it out together. But always. No more giving in to pressure from others or sacrificing yourself for those who don't value you. My phone is ringing with a fresh message even as I nod. Ishmael. Well done, sis, because you're having a party. Would you be able to assist me with a little issue? I keep my finger over the respond button while I gaze at the message. Old habits don't go away easily. 1 week following the engagement dinner, the call is made at 3 a.m. Against the nightstand, my phone rattles. The name of Mum flashes on the screen. Her voice is either panicked or harsh. You must visit us immediately. Nico and 2 males are present. Ishmael is being threatened by them. Beside me, Michael stirs. What's the matter? I'm putting on clothes already. There's problems for my brother. This time there's real problems. I'll accompany you. 3 men are in the living room when we go to Mom's house. Nico, who appears menacing in his pricey suit, and 2 other people who resemble bouncers more than debt collectors. With his head in his hands, Ishmael sits on the couch. Dad, who must have been called too, is standing at the window with his jaw clenched as Mum is pacing. Well, well, Nico replies with a cold smile. The sister, who has achieved success, shows up. What is the amount, may I ask? 50,000. The room becomes silent. Mom even stops pacing. I claim that's not feasible. It was 9,000 last month. Interest builds up. Nico gives a shrug. In addition to the additional loans, your sibling has been rather busy. I looked across at Ishmael. Fresh loans? He refuses to look at me. I believed I could regain it. You have a whole day, checking his watch, Nico says. Or we begin to destroy things. Your brother's fingers first. The yelling begins when they depart. You must assist him. My mother takes hold of my arm. He is your sibling. That type of money is no longer in my possession. I've given him everything, I say. How about Michael? For the first time, Dad recommends speaking. Your fiancé could, of course. Don't. Like ice. Michael's voice pierces the room. Don't even complete that statement. Melina shows up at the door. She must have been called to Ava by someone. Avoid becoming self-centered. It's family. Selfish. It sounds a little hysterical when I chuckle. Are you curious about the amount of money I have provided this family? Do you want to see the spreadsheet? Do you maintain spreadsheets? Mom looks appalled, as if we were conducting business. I am, of course. I take my phone out and open the file I've been keeping up with for years. $200,000, Mother. I've given you that much over the last 10 years. My retirement money, my whole savings, everything. The room falls silent once more. However, you earn a fine living. From her corner, Summer says, and now Michael. Quit. Michael moves forward. Eve is no longer your personal bank, and I won't be either. Our goal is to keep your brother alive. Mom yells. No, I answer softly. Are you attempting to shield him from repercussions once more? At last, Ishmael raises his head. He has crimson eyes. Please, sis. This time they're serious. I tell them that they're always serious and that I'm always there to remedy it. However, it is no longer the case. So you're approving his death sentence, Dad says in a dramatic way. No, it was what you all did. Every time you made things easier for him, every time you phoned me rather than helping him, every time you made things easier for him. Mom bursts into tears. Melina steps in to console her, giving me a nasty look. Other options are available, Michael adds coolly. Bankruptcy, programs for gambling addiction, officers, defense, officers. Ishmael leaps to his feet. Are you insane? You don't call the police on these folks. I suppose you ought to have considered that before taking out a loan from them. My phone is buzzing. Nico texted. TikTok, I'm finished. I make the announcement as I approach the door. Try it yourself. Eva, Mom's voice cracks. You cannot abandon your sibling in this manner. I make one final spin around. Observe me in the vehicle. I can't get the key in the ignition because my hands are trembling so much. Michael takes them carefully. Did I make the correct decision, or did you? What if he was actually harmed? That's not your problem. It's his and theirs. Messages start popping up on my phone. Melina accuses me of being callous. My mother claims she didn't bring me up to be so ruthless. Father citing obligation to the family. Summer is sending emojis of sorrowful faces. I switch off my phone. I murmur that they will never forgive me for this. The automobile is started by Michael. That might not be a terrible thing. I reflect on all the times I've saved them and given up my own future for theirs as we make our way home. They've taken and taken and taken all the time. Now what? Now I ask. Michael grasps my hand. You now begin to live for yourself. However, we are both aware that it won't be that easy. Because my brother's debt is getting closer to its due date someplace in the city, and his safety net isn't going to save him for the first time in his life. I kind of want he falls hard enough to learn how to save himself at last. I'm afraid he won't make it through the landing. I spent 3 days compiling proof, including bank statements, transfer records, emails, texts, and meticulous documentation of every frantic appeal, guilt trip, and manipulation. As if we were getting ready for a business meeting rather than a family execution, Michael assists me in putting everything together into a presentation. Are you certain about this? As I set up the Zoom call, he asks. They'd want to speak. Let's have a conversation. Their faces come up on the screen one by one. Mom appears to be a martyr. Dad was harsh and judgmental, and Melina was hardly able to hide her anger. Uncomfortable, yet present, is Summer. Additionally, Ishmael has a black eye, presumably Nico's warning shot. "We've been attempting to get in touch with you for days," says Mom. "I am aware that I share the first spreadsheet on my screen. Let's discuss why." "What is this?" Melina narrows her eyes at the TV. "This represents all of the money I have donated to this family in the previous decade, arranged according to recipient date and amount." I go on to the following slide by clicking. Ishmael's gambling debts are shown here. Have you seen the trend each time they become larger? Never. Dad says there's no need for this. Yes, I believe that is really essential. The following slide. Melina's emergencies are listed here. Payments for rental cars. That boutique that didn't succeed because you took a vacation with the initial funds. Melina gets red in the face. It's confidential. In this household, nothing is private. When you began planning how to utilize my engagement to increase your income, you made sure of that. Mom exclaims. We never do. You were heard. It is during the engagement dinner that Michael makes his first public statement. Every single syllable. There is silence. As I proceed through the slides, I systematically reveal every debt, every deception, and every breach of repayment commitment. Only this once. $200,000. Finally, I say, I have given you that. My future, my security, all of my savings. We are related. Mom begs. Family is helpful. Family. No mother. Family members help one another. Family members support one another. A family does not make fun of one member behind their back and treat them like an ATM. Is that the point of this? Melina sneers. Your emotions were wounded. Consequences are at issue here. Ishmael need treatment. No more bailouts. You must learn to make do with what you have, as well as Mom. You must quit giving in to everyone's worst impulses. Please. Ishmael touches his black eye and talks. I'm going to be killed. According to Michael, there are programs, support groups for gambling addiction, debt guidance, protection of witnesses if required. We have studied them all. Programs are unnecessary for us? Dad laughs. You must take action and assist your brother. No. The term conveys a sense of liberation. We're finished. Completed. Mom's voice comes up. What does that signify? Completed. I'm going to cut you all off. No more rescues, no more money, no more journeys of guilt. This is impossible, Melina yells. Where is your family no more? Mom bursts into tears. Dad starts giving duty lectures. Melina yells over being betrayed. I gave them permission. Their remarks are no longer effective. All the paperwork has been turned over to a lawyer. Calmly, I go on. She will file harassment charges if any of you attempt to contact Michael or me for money once again. Would you imprison your own brother? Finally speaking, Sam asks. No, I'm letting him deal with the fallout from his behavior. There is a distinction. You're a bitch, Melina spat. Do you believe that you are superior to us? No. Because of you, I believe I'm done being worse than I am. Ishmael begins to beg. Mom's cries get louder. Scripture regarding family loyalty is cited by Dad. I bide my time till they exhaust themselves. A final email with resources for addiction assistance and financial counseling is being sent to each of you. It is up to you what you do with it. However, I'm pointing at the screen. This will be our final conversation. This is something you'll regret. Mom says, her eyes drying up all of a sudden. When you require our assistance. Mom, it's been years since I needed you. All I wanted was you. There is a distinction. I hang up the phone in protest. It's like a thunderclap of quiet after that. I begin to tremble as Michael draws me closer. You succeeded. I succeeded. My voice cracks. God, I did it, I swear. My phone instantly begins to buzz. Text messages, emails, and calls. I systematically block each number just like I would prune out a garden. Now what? May I ask, we now have different numbers. If we have to start over, move. I will never be forgiven by them. No, he does agree, but perhaps you will come to regret letting them leave. I give my phone a final glance before shutting it off entirely. Mom sent me one last text message. You will always be our source of income. Never. Remember that. I remove it and all other evidence of them. Retaliation isn't always the reason to burn bridges. At times, it comes down to survival. There are waves of the aftermath. The assault on social media comes first. Melina spearheads the campaign with ambiguous Facebook postings about money-changing individuals and poisonous family members. Mom joins in, asking for prayers for daughters who have lost their roots. I remove my accounts. The flying monkeys follow. Distant family members, family, companions, even the instructor I had in high school. Everyone is attempting to comprehend the situation. Your mom is devastated. The phone calls my aunt. She isn't eating. She probably told you that. After responding, I block her phone. Michael. Sister Stacy turns out to be my unanticipated ally. She informs me over coffee that they are attempting to add me on Facebook. They were all blocked by me. What a bunch of nerves. The Zoom call was 3 weeks later. At my workplace, Summer arrives. Only she is aware of my workplace. She slides into the chair across from my desk and says, "Just listen to me. It's not good. Ever so awful. No one is getting any money from me. Money isn't the point." "Not exactly." She twiddles her sleeve. "Ishmael isn't there. Mom is experiencing panic attacks. Dad is drinking once more." She also appears surprised. They're disintegrating. For years, they've been disintegrating. Summertime. I simply quit trying to keep everything together. How come you're so icy? How are you able to be so blind? Tears fill her eyes as she departs. I ignore the shaking in my hands and return to my job. Michael discovers me looking at nothing on our balcony that evening. A difficult day. Summer arrived. He sits next to me. "Do you want to discuss it instead of waiting? Would you like to get married next month?" He gives a blink. That's a significant shift in topic. They shouldn't have time to make any plans, in my opinion. No family turmoil, no grand ceremony. Only a justice of the peace, Stacy and us. "All right," he says plainly. "Come on, let's do it. However, the cosmos has different ideas." A week later, I notice Ishmael sitting on the stairs of our building as I make my way home after supper. He looks awful. Not cleaned, not shaven, in a desperate situation. Avoid running. I freeze as he yells, "Ava, please, 5 minutes." I touch Michael's arm, but he takes a cautious step forward. "Hold on." I move toward my brother while avoiding contact. "You look terrible." "Yes, all right. That's what loan sharks will do to you." His split lip turns his attempt at a grin into a scowl. "Money is not why I'm here. So why have you come here to assert that you were correct in every way?" He strokes his unclean hair with a trembling palm. "I reached my lowest point, sis. Lost everything. Even put Mom's jewels up for pawn." Rehabilitation. Still a possibility. Yes, I am aware of it. In fact, that's why I came. He takes out a rumpled piece of paper. I had sent the list of resources. You suggested this location. A scholarship program is in place. I submitted an application. Excellent. I was accepted by them. His voice breaks. Tomorrow is when I begin. 90 days. Impatient. My chest starts to relax a little. I'm relieved that I'm not requesting your forgiveness or trust. Or perhaps speak to me once again. He wincingly stands slowly. I only wanted to let you know that you were correct. To disconnect us, to disconnect me. Perhaps if you had taken action sooner. Perhaps. I concur. In any case, I should leave. I had to catch a bus. He steps forward, stutters a little. Be joyful. Ava, you're worthy. I resist the impulse to assist to pay for his bus fare to revert to my old habits as I watch him hobble away. Michael approaches me next to me. "Are you all right?" "No," I acknowledge. "However, I will be." I received an email from Summer that evening. Ishmael will be attending treatment. Mom is enraged. Claims to be leaving the family. Similar to what you did. Perhaps you were both correct to go, in my opinion. I don't delete it, but I also don't respond. Melina makes another mysterious status update the next morning. Not all the time is blood more important than water. It's what drowns you sometimes. Mom remarks, "Please offer your prayers for our lost sheep to return home." I shut off my computer and look at Michael. Today, let's visit City Hall. Now. Right now, before I decide otherwise. Before they figure out how to turn this into a personal attack. 2. After examining my face, he nods. I'll give Stacy a call. We are married 2 hours later. No flowers, no family turmoil, no white dress. Only us. As we sign the marriage certificate, Stacy serves as our witness and our vow to uphold. I hear a text from an unidentified number buzzing on my phone. Using Dad's phone, Mom, you'll be sorry you ignored us. Family endures forever. Michael takes the phone and blocks the number when I show him. We choose our family, he adds, kissing me. And for the first time since it all started, we chose one another. I really think that's sufficient. I've been married for 6 months. Like a crashing ball, karma comes. During the summer, the news is released. Who has adopted the practice of providing me with succinct, accurate updates every few weeks, Ishmael ended up in jail. Not for gambling fraud, according to her text. He was using Nico Molina as a co-signer on loans in some sort of Ponzi scam. Parents pledged their home as security. Everything is disintegrating. When I read it, Michael and I are in the kitchen. When family news comes in, my hands no longer tremble. Are you curious about the humorous part? I display the text to him. I anticipated this years ago. Informed them that he was engaging in unlawful activity. I was labeled paranoid. Over the course of the following few days, the tale is revealed through summer updates and local news. Ishmael had been operating a fraudulent investment scheme offering enormous profits to desperate gamblers. Melina had assisted him in creating the fictitious businesses in the hopes that she would become wealthy quickly. More victims were brought in because his parents had endorsed him to their friends. Ishmael might now face a lengthy jail sentence. Melina's reputation is ruined. The house that Mom and Dad own is being lost. Family pictures that will soon belong to someone else still remain on the walls of the house where I grew up. Your mom is requesting your address. Summer texts you to say she needs to speak with you face to face. No, I say plainly. She is sobbing a lot and claims that you are their only chance. Summer's phone is blocked by me. She made the decision to stay there even if it hurts. Messenger. That night, Michael and I go a look at a lakefront home we've been considering. This place is serene, far away from them, far away from the city. As he watches me gaze over the ocean, he adds, "We can make this our home, a new beginning." My phone is buzzing. Melina with a different phone number. I am being accused of being a co-conspirator. I could end up in prison. Please, never. I'm your sister, yet I know we hurt you. I remove it without answering. I get a courier package at work the next day. Mom Ava's handwritten note is included. In 3 weeks, your father and I will be homeless. Everything is being taken by the bank. We taught you not to desert family during their most difficult time. You can't possibly want this for your parents, whatever of your problems with us. To rescue the house, we must raise $200,000. Michael earns a nice living. To him, this would be nothing. Don't allow your family to be destroyed by your intransigence. Recall who changed your underwear. You were fed by whom? Who killed you? Assist us, Mom. I burn the letter in our fireplace when I get home. Observing the words that were filled with guilt turn to ash. The local newspaper publishes an article on Ishmael's arrest the next morning. One of his victims, an elderly widow who lost her retirement funds, is quoted. "When I remember the name, my stomach twists. When I was growing up, she lived next door, used to make us kids cookies. Karma." When I show Michael, he claims that they preyed on their own people. I respond that they always did. I was only the initial casualty. Days go by. There is more news. More victims come forward. Melina is taken into custody. When they get others to invest, Mom and Dad are sued. Their entire world is collapsing. And I'm not there to pick up the pieces for the first time in my life. Rather, I'm signing documents related to planning, living, remodeling, and the lake house. Melina, your sister, accepted a plea bargain. Our attorney tells us that she will be testifying against Ishmael, 5 years as opposed to 20. "This is the epitome of family loyalty," Michael remarks sardonically. I dreamed of drowning in the tears of my mother and Ishmael's frantic face that night. I gasp as I wake up. I'm held by Michael. "Do you want to discuss it?" "No." "I want to pack," I say. We move into our lake cottage throughout the course of the weekend. It's healing. Planning, hanging artwork, and setting up furnishings. There are no family portraits on these walls. As we unpack, there is no guilt in these rooms. I discover an ancient letter and card box. Mom's birthday greetings, Melina's Christmas cards, and Ishmael's messages, pledging to repay me for a lifetime of deceit masquerading as affection. After carrying the box to the dock, I let it fall into the lake. Without a ripple, it is swallowed by the river. A final news alert flashes on my phone. Ishmael, tomorrow is sentencing. Next week, Mom and Dad's house will be put up for auction. Melina's jail sentence is about to begin. I switch off my phone and remove the warning. "Are you all right?" Inquiring from the doorway is Michael. I gaze at the serene lake, our fresh start, and the life we're creating apart from their mayhem. Yes, I agree. And it's not a lie for the first time. Action isn't always the greatest form of retaliation. It's not there. As I sit at my workstation, the early sun gleams off the lake, hovering fingers over my keyboard. The home is still, save for the soft sound of the waves crashing on our dock, and Michael is still asleep upstairs. I start typing in a fresh document. I'm writing this letter to finally release you, younger Ava, not to send. My thoughts are interrupted by the doorbell via the security camera. Summer is standing on our doorstep and appears anxious but resolute. I think about not responding, but her position compels me to open the door. Quickly, she urges, "Before you slam the door." I'm not present. Am I messenger? For myself, I'm here. I don't welcome her inside, but I do keep the door open. "Speak." I also left them. She seems little as she gives herself a hug. After witnessing their treatment of the elderly woman from our neighborhood, I was at my limit. Mom made an effort to persuade me to put my funds into Ishmael's plan. I realized then that you were correct all along. Enter. At last, coffee in the kitchen, I say. Summer tells me everything. How Marlene has been blaming everyone but herself in the letters she writes from prison. How Mom and Dad continue to claim they done nothing wrong while living in a budget hotel. Ishmael's 20-year journey. She acknowledges that they are discussing appealing to you once more. They believe that enough time has gone by for you to possibly know. Yes, that's one of the reasons I'm here. She takes out a few documents. I need your assistance with something that doesn't involve money. I'm returning to school, beginning again. Would you serve as my point of reference? The only successful individual I know who made it there is you, to be honest. I examine the face of my younger sister. Something has changed there, a lucidity that had hitherto been absent. All okay, I say, but first you must read something. I show her the screen of my laptop. I was composing a letter. Younger Eva, please. I apologize. For so long, I let them to dull your brightness. I regret teaching you that love requires giving up something in order to give something to someone else. I apologize for giving you the impression that your family responsibilities came before your own goals. However, I no longer apologize. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Summer reads in silence. She looks up when she's done. Is there anything I should add? I give a nod. She types. Summer, my youngest. I apologize. I remained silent as they drained you dry. I apologize for my cowardice. However, I'm picking up tips from your strength. Writing letters to our younger selves took up the morning, releasing the truth that has been repressed for years. Michael finds us both sobbing and giggling over coffee when he comes downstairs. Is everything all right? With caution, he asks, arriving. I say. Summer comes in for lunch. We discuss her ambitions for education, healing, and creating a life that is genuinely ours. She has changed. Clearer, but in some ways harder, similar to me. I complete my letter after she departs. You'll discover that true love doesn't need you to destroy yourself. You will discover that family has nothing to do with blood or duty. It has to do with respect and decision. You'll discover that leaving is sometimes the best course of action. And one day, you'll sit in a lovely lakeside home with a sister who finally gets it and a spouse who adores you. And you'll understand that you're no longer just getting by. You are a living example of love. The one who ultimately made her own decision. I add one more thing after printing the letter. My revised will. I've talked a lot about this with Michael. If we have children in the future, they will receive the majority of our fortune. The remainder is donated to the Forward Fund, a nonprofit charity that helps victims of family financial abuse. My parents and elder siblings do not receive a dime. As I sign the papers, that's the final thing I say to Michael. No more snags. He gives me a forehead kiss. I'm proud of you. My phone is buzzing. Summer texted. I'm grateful for today, for everything, for letting me know that there is an alternative. The afternoon sun gleams on the lake outside. I picture my parents in their hotel room, regarding Melina in her jail cell, about Ishmael's potential 20-year prison sentence. I consider justice, peace, and karma. I grab Michael's hand, shut down my laptop, and head out to our dock. The still water's surface reflects the sky like a mirror. I see a powerful, liberated, and clear-eyed image of myself. Retaliation isn't always about hurting other people. Sometimes the goal is to complete oneself. Sometimes it involves creating a brand new narrative. You're not the cash machine, the victim, or the rescuer for one thing. Only you. At last, be wholly yourself, and that's sufficient.